You woke up this morning with the best intentions. Maybe you told yourself, today I focus. Today I build something real. Today I am in control. And then, almost before you were conscious, before the coffee, before the first breath of morning air had fully entered your lungs, your thumb was already moving, scrolling, consuming, reacting, not because you chose to, because something chose for you. There is a war being waged right now, not in the streets, not on a battlefield. It is being fought inside the soft architecture of your brain, inside your dopamine pathways, your reward circuits, your prefrontal cortex. And for most people, it is a war they are losing without ever knowing it started. This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience. This is design. And this is the most important conversation nobody is having loudly enough. Welcome to Unplugged Mind. Let's begin with a simple truth that the entire Silicon Valley economy depends on you never fully accepting. Your attention is the product, not your data, not your clicks. Your attention, your raw, unprocessed human consciousness, the same resource that Michelangelo used to paint the Sistine Chapel, that Newton used to formulate the laws of motion, that every great thinker, builder, and creator in human history drew upon to do something that mattered. That resource, that singular, irreplaceable resource, is being systematically harvested. In 2023, the average person spent 6 hours and 37 minutes per day on screens. Not working, not creating, consuming. That is more time than most people sleep. More time than most people spend with their families. More time, in many cases, than people spend doing anything they would describe as meaningful. Now, compound that across a decade, and you begin to understand not just a personal problem, but a civilizational one. But here is what makes this different from every other addiction, every other distraction, every other temptation humanity has ever faced. This one was engineered. The slot machines of Las Vegas, which we consider symbols of human weakness and manipulation, operate on something called variable reward scheduling. You pull the lever. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. The unpredictability is the entire mechanism. It hijacks your brain's reward system with surgical precision. The infinite scroll was designed on the exact same principle. The like button, the notification badge, the autoplay. Every single one of these features was not discovered by accident. They were built in rooms full of behavioral psychologists and neuroscientists whose sole purpose was to make the product more sticky, which is the industry's sanitized word for addictive. Sean Parker, one of Facebook's founding presidents, admitted this publicly. He said, and I want you to hear this clearly, the thought process was, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? And that means we need to give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while. A little dopamine hit every once in a while. That is not a feature, that is a leash. To understand how deep this goes, you need to understand your brain. Specifically, you need to understand the relationship between two systems that are in constant negotiation inside your skull. The first is the limbic system. It is ancient, it is fast, it is emotional, impulsive, and pleasure-seeking. This is the part of your brain that reaches for the phone before you even know you are doing it. It does not think, it reacts. It is optimized for survival, but it cannot distinguish between a predator in the jungle and a notification from an app. The second is the prefrontal cortex. This is the seat of what we call executive function. Your ability to plan, to delay gratification, to override impulse with intention. This is the part of your brain that makes you human in the deepest sense. It is the architect of your long-term self. And here is the critical piece. Willpower is not infinite. It is not a character trait. It is a biological resource, one that depletes with every decision, every temptation resisted, every moment of self-regulation. Psychologists call this ego depletion. Every time you pick up your phone and put it down without acting on it, you spend a small amount of that resource. Every notification you ignore costs you something real. And Silicon Valley's entire business model depends on attacking that resource continuously, relentlessly, and with increasing sophistication. until it is exhausted, because an exhausted prefrontal cortex surrenders to the limbic system, and a surrendered limbic system clicks, scrolls, watches, and buys. There is also the matter of dopamine dysregulation. When the brain is repeatedly flooded with fast, cheap dopamine, the kind that comes from social media, from short-form video, from constant novelty, it adapts. It downregulates. It requires more stimulation to feel the same satisfaction. The baseline drops. And suddenly, the things that once gave you genuine pleasure, reading a book, taking a long walk, building something slowly and carefully, they feel dull. They feel almost painful in their slowness. You have not become lazy. You have been neurologically recalibrated. Your capacity for deep, sustained, meaningful engagement, the kind that produces mastery, creativity, and genuine fulfillment, has been quietly eroded. Not by your own choices, but by systems designed to erode it. This is not an exaggeration. This is what the research shows. This is what the engineers who built these systems privately acknowledge. And this is what you must understand before you can begin to rebuild. Now we move from diagnosis to architecture. Because understanding the problem is not enough. You need a framework. You need rules, not suggestions, not tips, not hacks. Rules that create structure where chaos has been permitted to operate. Rule 1. Own your first hour. The most neurologically vulnerable moment of your day is the first 60 minutes after you wake. During sleep, your brain consolidates memory, repairs neural pathways, and resets your dopamine baseline. You wake in a state of relative clarity. The prefrontal cortex is fresh. The limbic system is calm. This is the rarest mental state you will experience all day. And most people immediately destroy it. They reach for the phone. They flood the freshly reset brain with notifications, news, social comparison, and digital noise. The limbic system ignites. The prefrontal cortex, still warming up, still fragile, never gets the chance to establish itself as the governing force of the day. The rule is absolute. No screens for the first 60 minutes. No exceptions. This is non-negotiable. Use that hour to move your body, to sit in silence, to write by hand, to read something that requires your full attention, to think slowly, quietly, without direction. You are not wasting time. You are fortifying the executive function that will determine the quality of every decision, every creative act, every moment of discipline you attempt for the rest of the day. Your morning is the foundation, and right now you are handing it to strangers who have engineered it to weaken you. Take it back. Rule 2. Design friction into temptation. Willpower, as we have established, is a finite resource. The Stoic approach to this is not to rely on discipline alone. It is to design your environment so that discipline is required less often. This is what the ancient Stoics understood intuitively and what behavioral science confirms rigorously. The environment shapes behavior more reliably than intention does. Marcus Aurelius did not merely resolve to be virtuous. He built systems of thought, ritual, and reflection that made virtue the path of least resistance. You must do the same, digitally. Delete social media apps from your phone, not from your life, from your phone. Force yourself to access them only on a laptop, only at a designated time, only after a conscious, deliberate act of sitting down and opening a browser. That friction, that small but meaningful obstacle, is enough to interrupt the automatic behavior that is costing you hours. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Every badge, every buzz, every banner is a tiny ambush on your attention. Your phone should serve your intentions, not broadcast other people's demands for your focus. And critically, create a physical separation between yourself and your device during your most important work. Not in your pocket, not face down on the desk, in another room. Because the mere presence of a smartphone on a desk, even silent, even face down, even turned off, measurably reduces available cognitive capacity. This was demonstrated in a 2017 University of Texas study. The device does not need to be active to drain you. Its proximity alone is enough. Friction is not punishment. Friction is architecture. Build it deliberately. Rule 3. Restore your capacity for depth. The final rule is the most demanding. and the most transformative. You must actively rebuild your tolerance for boredom. This sounds almost absurd in the modern context. But consider, every moment of boredom you now reflexively fill with your phone is a moment your brain would otherwise spend in what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a state of internally directed thought associated with creativity, self-reflection, long-term planning, and the integration of complex ideas. Boredom, properly experienced, is not emptiness. It is incubation. It is the mental state in which your most original thoughts emerge, in which problems you have been wrestling with suddenly resolve, in which you remember who you are beneath the noise. The path back to depth is not comfortable. When you first sit without stimulation, the discomfort is real. The urge to reach for the phone is almost physical. But that discomfort is information. It is the signal of a mind that has been trained to flee itself, and it is the exact sensation you must learn to sit with. Begin with books, not audiobooks, not summaries. Books, long, demanding, slow books that require you to construct the meaning yourself, that refuse to give you the next hit until you have earned it through sustained attention. Read for 30 minutes without stopping, then 45. Then an hour. You are not just reading. You are doing the neurological equivalent of physical rehabilitation after an injury. Reclaim long walks without headphones. Sit with meals without screens. Allow your mind to wander without immediately capturing and broadcasting its wandering to an audience. These practices are not romantic nostalgia. They are the deliberate reconstruction of cognitive architecture that has been damaged. This is how you rebuild depth. This is how you reclaim the capacity for the kind of thinking that actually changes things. Let me leave you with this. The Stoics had a concept, and it is perhaps the most quietly radical idea in the entire history of philosophy. Amor fati, love of fate. But before that, before you can love your fate, you must first possess it. And right now, for most people, fate is being authored by an algorithm. The life you live, the thoughts you think, the desires you feel, the fears you cannot name, are being shaped in measurable, documented scientific ways by systems that have no interest in your flourishing. Systems that profit directly from your fragmentation. Systems that grow more powerful the more powerless you become. To reclaim your willpower is not a wellness project. It is an act of philosophical resistance. It is the assertion, quiet, daily, personal, that your consciousness belongs to you, that the architecture of your inner life will be designed by your values, not by someone else's quarterly earnings. This is not easy. Nothing worth doing is easy. But the alternative, a life spent in the soft, comfortable captivity of the infinite scroll, mistaking stimulation for meaning and reaction for intention, is a life that will feel at its end like it happened to you rather than through you. You were not built for that. Own your first hour. Design your environment. Rebuild your depth. And if this conversation resonates, if something in these words named something you have felt but could not articulate, then stay close to this channel. Because this is what Unplugged Mind is built for. Not content, not distraction, architecture. The architecture of a mind that is sovereign, focused, and genuinely free. Subscribe, and we will build it together.